take projection.
It's Friday morning and you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Agers.
And we've got a jam-packed episode of the podcast this week. First off, let's get into the passing of Jay Briscoe. Sudden passing of Jay Briscoe. Just unfortunate and sad all around. I only saw like a match or two probably total from the Briscoes because I haven't seen a ton of their work. I just haven't seen a ton of Ring of Honor or anything else that they're in. So, but Patrick wants to talk a bit about it. So I'll just turn the floor over to you, Patrick.
Yeah, man. When this came through, this I was surprised, and this bummed me out quite a bit, man. Because Corey, you're a little bit older than me. So when Jay and Mark and the Briscoes were really on their run, we're talking early Ring of Honor here, 2005, 2006, 2007. I was just a teenager, man, and I think for a lot of people my age, I'm 32. If you were watching WWE at that time, the WWE product during that era it felt really sanitized and safe. And so for somebody like me who then was turned on to Ring of Honor and American Independent Wrestling and just kind of devouring clips on YouTube, the Briscoes, and Jay Briscoe in particular, was the first sort of people that I gravitated to where it was like, holy shit, there's wrestling that exists in these small little places. And not only that, holy shit, it's better. And who the fuck are these Briscoe guys? Because just the promos alone, them out on their farm in Sandy Fork, Delaware, cutting promos in the barn. I think their dad or their mom was just holding the camera. Like it felt so raw and so refreshing. And a little bit punk rockish, right? I think as teenagers we all kind of gravitate towards that kind of sort of rebellious stuff. And then you just start watching the Briscoe matches, and I mean, it's for two guys, and for Jay in particular, to have never been on a big platform like WWE or AEW, to not have any kind of national television exposure, and to still make such the impact that he made, to the point to where, during his passing, you saw somebody like Big E tweet out and be like, hey, when we were starting the New Day, we borrowed, in quotes, a lot of stuff from the Briscoes. Like, they were so influential.
Yeah.
And if you want to start talking about the Mount Rushmore of Ring of Honor, Jay Briscoe's on there. I mean, I think a 13-time tag team champion. Jay Briscoe was a 2-time ROH world heavyweight champion. But I think the thing that struck me the most is, all the wrestlers and stuff, you just kind of scrolling through Twitter, not a lot of them talked about Jay Briscoe, the wrestler.
Yeah.
That came secondary to Jay Briscoe, the person.
I saw a lot of that too. I like I said, I didn't really know much about him at all. But I've learned a lot just in the last few days, just reading Twitter and seeing people's reactions and talking about the father that he was, and how much he adored his kids and how much his family meant to him. And I apologize if y'all can hear my dog. She is crying and I can see her little nose sticking under the door. And she wants in here real bad, but I won't let her because she'll just grab some books and run off with them. But yeah, everybody talked about him being a dad, and there's a clip circulating that him rehearsing his daughter's cheerleading routine in their living room with her, and how cute that was and stuff. And yeah, man, it's just sad. It's sad, and it I wish I saw more of him while he was alive. They just had a huge dog collar match with FTR, and FTR. Dax has posted a lot about him in the last day or two, and I assume he'll talk about him on his next podcast as well.
Yeah, you would have to. And you think it's kind of crazy. The Briscoes and FTR might have just had the greatest trilogy in all of tag team wrestling, right? So you want to talk about just the impact that somebody like Jay Briscoe is able to leave behind on an art form. And, we talk about this a lot, I think, on this podcast, and I think if pat ourselves on the back a little bit, I think we do kind of a good job of sort of situating professional wrestling as an art form rather than talking about a business that much. And so a guy, in a lot of art forms, it's not always the mainstream, mega millionaire stars that end up being the most influential. You look at something like cinema. How many people out there, casual movie fans, know like Igmar Bergman's name? You know what I mean, the Swiss director. But the people who are making movies uh, know that guy's name. Like Kurosawa, that's another one. How many people that are watching Marvel movies know a Kurosawa? But the people that are making those Marvel movies, they were for sure influenced by a guy like him. And Jay Briscoe, I think, is in that similar sort of vein. Never got any national television exposure. Unfortunately, probably due to the fact that they put out some homophobic tweets back in the day. But even then, in his passing, you saw a guy like Effie, who was really at the forefront of the LGBTQ representation in American independent wrestling. Effie being like, this dude was nothing but nice to me, and he changed later in life. So it's kind of unfortunate that some of their worst moments. Um, Sometimes our culture doesn't allow for people to change, and
Yeah.
it doesn't give a path to redemption, because these two guys, Jay and Mark Briscoe, should have been big time on television somewhere, either in WWE or AEW. You cannot tell me that if the Briscoes would have came into WWE in 2012, they wouldn't have been one of the biggest acts in the company. I mean, they just have that kind of magnetism about them. We talk about believability on this podcast all the time. If there's a professional wrestler in the history of the art that personified believability, it's fucking Jay Briscoe. I mean, those, and I can keep going on and on, but just the influence that guy's had, they're going to be tag teams 10, 20, 30 years from now. They're going to go back and watch Briscoe matches and just straight up steal from them,
Yeah.
stealing the artistry of them. So it's unfortunate, and he was one hell of a professional wrestler, but it's heartwarming to know too that he was an even better man and an even better father and brother in person. And so at least we can take some solace in that, and our condolences to his family. But Jay Briscoe will live on forever in the world of professional wrestling. His name won't be forgotten. And how many of us can say that when we pass, we make that big of an impact, not only on people's lives, but in whatever livelihood we've decided to dedicate our time on this world to, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I know they started the show off last night, Dynamite, with a graphic, a memoriam for him, and I think they had something else planned that Warner wouldn't let them put on TV for whatever reason last night. I mean, maybe some of the stuff you mentioned earlier, but I also think they're doing like a memorial show, right? Am I mistaken?
No, yeah. So after Dynamite last night, of course, they always film Rampage, and then after Rampage, since they were on the West Coast, which I guess was fortunate, it wasn't that super late, and so yeah, they filmed a Ring of Honor, or not Ring of Honor, a Jay Briscoe tribute show that they're going to put up for free on YouTube and on Honor Club and stuff like that, where they flew in some guys. I saw some spoilers. Obviously, Mark Briscoe wasn't there because he's dealing with, I can't even imagine the grief that he's dealing with right now. And we didn't even talk about the fact that Jay had his two daughters in there who are now, trying to recover from that accident. So I would imagine, I think the next Ring of Honor pay-per-view is up around WrestleMania in March, April. I would suspect probably Mark Briscoe's on that card if he's up for it. If he still wants to wrestle, man,
Yeah.
These two guys have been doing it. They had to wrestle in masks because they weren't old enough to wrestle, right? Like their whole lives have been this. So maybe maybe Mark Briscoe decides to hang it up. Who knows? But he will be honored in some kind of way with the next Ring of Honor card, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, let's shift gears. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Nick Khan interview that came out this week concerning some WWE things.
Yeah, so the only reason I want to bring this up is because I was kind of taken aback is not the right word, but I was kind of just like, why the fuck are fans like upset about this? Okay, so for those who didn't know, Bill Simmons podcast, probably one of the biggest sports podcasts in the world. He had on Nick Khan, who is now the sole CEO of WWE. From just their brief conversation, it seems like Bill and Nick go back quite a ways. Bill kind of runs in those circles in Hollywood. Bill Simmons has been in Hollywood for over 20 years, or Los Angeles, I should say. And Nick Khan I guess famously was The Rock's agent, and that's how he kind of came to WWE. Um, the thing that I think fans were kind of struck by was he gave a little jab in there to Tony Khan, which, I am the king of petty. So I fucking thought it was hilarious. I loved it. And also, for those who didn't listen to the podcast, essentially what he said was Bill Simmons brought up AEW and how them being competition. And the first thing Nick Khan said was, well, how are they doing now? To the point where Bill had to correctly kind of say, well, they're struggling because, business-wise, I think they are struggling a little bit. Some pay-per-view, some gates are down, that sort of stuff. And then Nick proceeds to go on where he praises Shad Khan and said, hey, I met him a year and a half ago. Super impressive guy, self-made billionaire, got his stuff in the auto parts industry. And then he just goes, I've never met the kid, Tony, but he seems like a nice kid. Which is just a perfect little jab in the gut. And I just started busting out laughing because I thought it was hilarious. If you're a fan of AEW, right, and you're one of these AEW diehards that can't see the good, that sees no bad in AEW whatsoever and sees nothing but the bad in WWE, you're one of those, like, staunch people, right? You can't praise Tony Khan every time he comes out and calls himself the best Khan in wrestling and has that little tweet he put out when Vince McMahon came back where it's like, oh, everyone's being super nice to me today. You can't think that shit's funny, and then when somebody lands a jab from the other side, you think it's all horseshit or disrespectful or whatever. It's got to go both ways. At the end of the day, these are two billionaires, ultra elite, rich dudes who are, going back and forth. I think it's just hilarious. The thing that I thought was a little bit, or the thing that I was struck by in the interview was like, oh, I can see why Nick Khan is loved by Mr. McMahon, because Nick was charismatic. He artfully dodged some of the questions he didn't want to answer to the point where Bill was like, you didn't answer my question. But by the time Nick got done talking, he had talked around the answer. Yeah, and I can see why people like this dude. I was kind of impressed by it. And, obviously the big thing that kept bringing up was the imminent sale of WWE, which at this point I think we're past potential. It seems like a WWE sale is coming to somebody. Now, whether that is during the podcast specifically, Disney was brought up, ESPN was brought up, Endeavor Media, who owned the UFC, their names were brought up. So it seems like Vince McMahon, along with the people on the board, are really exploring this, and it feels as if, just from listening to this podcast, it's going to be sooner rather than later. And when I say sooner, I mean with in the next couple months.
Right.
Because there's some TV deals that have to come up. And so obviously you want to get those things. You want to have a new buyer in place before people start negotiating TV deals. Because, for example, if Disney's going to buy WWE, well, they sure as shit don't want Monday Night Raw on the USA Network, right? Which is a competitor, or have it on Peacock, which is a straight competitor to Disney Plus, and vice versa. If Comcast Universal outright buys it, well, they don't probably, they're going to hold that and they want their show on their platform. So it's all a lot of, insider business stuff that we don't talk about a lot on this podcast. And for a lot of fans, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as the creative is good, that's all that really matters to us. I was just kind of, I just thought it was funny that the uproar about the little jabs he took at AEW. Cause what do you expect him to say?
Right. So. Yeah, maybe I'll get a chance to go back and check it out. But I think we should get into a little bit of the SmackDown from Friday night. I thought it was a good night for wrestling in general Friday night. There was KO versus Sami Zayn, Gunther, I always have to say both, versus Braun Strowman was that night, I believe. And then, went on into Rampage afterward. And, Braun Strowman and Gunther were fucking excellent, and I thought Sami Zayn and KO put on a good show as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of mad because as much as I love Gunther, I actually remembered that I fast forwarded through a lot of. I didn't fast forward. I came to SmackDown, I actually watched it live, but I only ended up watching the main event, so I didn't see the beginning of it, and I didn't have time this weekend to kind of go back. So the main event, KO, Sami Zayn, these two are just. They're Batman and Joker at this point. They're going to do this for forever, wrestle each other, and watch them wrestle each other, 7 nights a week if that's what they wanted to do. And it's the little things, it's the nuances that these guys get. That I think now people are kind of starting to pick up on. One of the big images that struck me that kind of circulated around Reddit was after they put KO through the table. Sami Zayn and Sami and the Bloodline they're holding up the ones. KO's just got Sami by the boot and he's holding him. And Sami's looking down at Kevin and Jay's looking at Sami. And just that little moment. Such a storytelling, such a great little storytelling moment that when this whole program finally finishes, it'll be one of those things where we can look back at and be like, oh, okay, there was the clue. Because Sami obviously still cares about Kevin, right? And Kevin still cares about Sami, even though, KO's first debut in NXT, what does he do? He powerbombs Sami Zayn on the apron, right? But, brothers fight a lot of the times, and I think these two are, they're legitimately brothers off screen, and their characters have been intertwined on screen to this point now, going back for damn near decades at this point. So, the more and more it looks like we're not going to get Sami versus Roman. Obviously, Cody Rhodes has gotten the damn near Superman potential return with his little short documentaries that have been airing.
Every week.
It looks like he's going to be the guy, which...
Yeah,
okay. I mean, I ain't mad at it. We'll see what he does, but...
yeah, and they've said he's going to be at the Rumble, right? They've confirmed that. So.
Yeah, that got announced Monday. And, he's going to win it, right?
I mean, you don't put him in the Rumble and not let him win.
Either him or the Rock. His name gets thrown up too. Why would the Rock come back and want to be in the Rumble?
Yeah, it makes zero sense.
The Rock can just show up and say, "I want that title. I'm gonna take it."
Yeah, the Rumble is for people that haven't been on TV in a while. They've been injured or whatever. Or haven't been in wrestling for a while, like when The Edge came back a couple years ago. And, man, my dog is fucking up my carpet under this door. I don't know what to do about it. She's going to, if I let her in here, she's just going to, take books off the bedside table. Anyway, that's not what the Rumble is for. You don't bring The Rock in for the Rumble, right?
Yeah. So I guess another thing, too, we can talk about, it looks like they're going to split both the tag team titles. Because you've seen the Judgment Day kind of set their sights on the Raw tag team title specifically. So I would imagine after WrestleMania, Raw is going to have its own set of tag titles. SmackDown will have its own set of tag titles. You would have to think that the World Championships are going to do the same thing. The WWE Championship will go to one show. The Universal Championship will go to the other. Is it a situation where Roman Reigns loses one night of WrestleMania but wins the other one, so he keeps one title? Is it a situation where the Bloodline completely dissolves altogether at WrestleMania and they lose all the titles they have, and the Usos have to also defend their 2 sets of titles, or they could lose a set of titles leading up to one of the pay-per-views,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff in there. This is a fun time for wrestling, though. I think Royal Rumble is next week, right?
Next weekend, yeah.
Next Saturday. So, I mean, we're here. This is it. We're on
kind
the road.
of be up against the goddamn playoffs, but oh well.
Yeah, kind of sucks. And then on Monday Night Raw, I was looking through here. I don't think there wasn't much to talk about. Austin Theory is still top of the card. They keep changing his look, and I like that about him. He had a little. He's been wearing this big kind of industrial looking green coat, but Monday night he had on just a nice little button down shirt that of course he had not buttoned, because why would you have a button? if I had a 12 pack and I was muscular shit, I'd never wear a shirt. First of all, that's the thing that I would do. You would never. I'd do this podcast even though we don't have video. I'd fucking do this podcast with no damn shirt on. Probably just look at myself in the mirror, So that was the thing, and going through here, Monday Night Raw is still it's not inconsequential, but it's highly skippable. There's a lot of heavy use of the fast forward button when Monday Night Raw is on.
Yeah.
And maybe then things will change when it gets its own title, big time title. Seth Rollins is always great to see, though. So he looks like he'll probably stay on Monday Night Raw. The Judgment Day, the rumors are Finn Balor's in line for a big push next year. If that's true, I don't know how Finn Balor stays in the Judgment Day, because when they come out, he's not the first person you look at. When the
Yeah.
Judgment Day's music hits, Rhea Ripley's the first person you look at. She's the de facto star of that group. I mean, Damian Priest, he's fine. He's a good hand. Dominic Mysterio continues to do just incredible work. I mean, the turnaround that dude has had these past couple weeks. I'm so looking forward to when Rey Mysterio smacks the shit out of him on WrestleMania. It is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
But Rhea Ripley is that star, and I don't think that if Finn's going to have that title, I don't know if he can do it and be in that group. Maybe I'm wrong about that though.
Yeah.
Rhea Ripley has because she is so big, and I mean just in stature. I mean, Monday Night Raw, she stood face to face with Solo Sikoa, and looked like she could probably slap him and probably take him. That's how physical of a specimen she is. She's the leader of that group.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying that they really wish that they would let them do an intergender match with Sikoa and Ripley.
Here's the thing, and I don't know, maybe this is a little bit of a hot take on Solo Sikoa. He is positioned as the enforcer of the bloodline. But when all those guys stand shoulder to shoulder, he's the smallest dude.
Yeah.
Both of his brothers are bigger than he is. Roman Reigns is bigger than he is. And there's a guy out there on the indies right now, Jacob Fatu, who is their cousin. I think it's Umaga's is Fatu's uncle or something like that. He's in MLW right now. He fits more of the enforcer type thing. If you pull up a picture of Jacob Fatu, he's probably over 300 pounds. He looks like a little bit like Umaga. So I don't know if, Solo being this street champ and supposed to be this ultra tough guy. I'm not saying he's not tough. I mean, he still looks like a badass. But I think he'd be better positioned almost like how Butch is with the Brawling Brutes, where Butch he's not physically imposing, he's just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And I think Solo's character would be better off if it went more of that route, where they were just like, this dude's the wild card, and who knows what the fuck he's gonna do. He could snap at any moment. We can't control him. As opposed to like, oh, you want to come to us? Here's our guy that's gonna pick up our thing, and it's a dude that's 3 inches shorter and probably 30 pounds less weighs less than the rest of us. I don't know, just a minor little tweak. Solo Sikoa is still awesome. Still got an awesome move. Love that he's doing the Samoan Spike. I think that character just needs a little tweak from the enforcer to, the Charlie Day wild card bitches, that kind of shit. Something like that would probably be better.
Yeah. Well, let's get into Rampage for a little bit. We haven't talked about Rampage on the show in a while, and I tweeted out Friday night that I thought it was the best Rampage that we had in a while. We can just do a couple of quick hitters in here. I really don't have anything else to say about Darby Allin versus Juice Robinson other than this shit was really fun. Good way to start off the show. I think they're doing a pretty good job, and it looks like in terms of the lineup for this coming Friday night, they're doing a good job of bringing in some big names, but then they're also starting to, like they've got, I think they've got Andretti versus Garcia on Friday, right?
Yeah.
To, let some of the younger guys get built up a little, but they're also putting on some matches with the big names like Darby Allin and stuff. And then they had an appearance by the Acclaimed and Daddy S. And they put the Guns butt first into that cement, which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And then the Kings of the Black Throne, which was Brody King and Malachi Black, versus Julia Hart. With Julia Hart and Buddy Matthews versus Eddie Kingston and Ortiz. Hadn't seen our guy Eddie on TV in a while, so it was nice to see him back. Little tension between he and Ortiz throughout. But yeah, I mean, I was just happy to see them back.
Here's what I find so funny about this Ortiz House of Black stuff is that we mentioned it on this podcast. So initially, when Ortiz stood up to House of Black, when they were all in the ring, right? If you'll go back and watch this episode of Dynamite, Malachi pulls Ortiz off of Buddy Matthews and Brody King is like, don't touch him. Ortiz then rolls to the outside. Malachi Black rolls to the outside and then kicks the ever-loving shit out of Ortiz. So this idea that, like, they didn't, because that's what they're running with. Oh, why did they not touch you? Well, they did. He beat the ever-living shit. Was he not supposed to beat the shit out of him? Did he forget that this was in story? Like, because they just bypassed the second half of what happened to that thing. And you can go back and watch it. I remember we talked about it on the podcast, like, well, he didn't touch him, but then he went out to the ring and then kicked him right in the damn face. Whatever, they've conveniently forgotten about that in AEW, as they do a lot of things. It's typical at this point. But I'm kind of a little bit intrigued by this story. I mean, it might just be because I really like House of Black and I really like Eddie Kingston. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would like to see Ortiz and House of Black, like, since they've taken Santana from him, or I guess I should say Santana took himself out of the company. Ortiz has kind of been on the back burner, and I love Proud and Powerful, or whatever the hell their tag team name was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Kingston will be on Rampage tonight if you're listening on Friday when this releases, so I'm sure that all of that will be addressed. I am looking at the notes from Rampage on the AEW website, and it says at the very end of the recap of that segment, it says Eddie didn't realize that Julia Hart was behind him, and Ortiz questioned Eddie. He said, "You gonna hit a girl?" But Eddie didn't realize it was Julia behind him. He thought it was Buddy who was behind him. Black finished off Kingston and then pinned him, and after the match, Malachi Black told Ortiz, "You did good." So yeah, I mean, there's something brewing there for sure, I think.
Yeah, Julia Hart has one hell of a damn blood-curdling scream, too.
Yeah.
Like, kudos to her.
Yeah, and whoever's putting her wardrobe together is doing a great job. I mean, that look fits her really well. And I mean, it's way better than the cheerleader persona she had going on.
Well, yeah, she went from cheerleader to goth Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
So that's an upgrade.
Yeah. The next segment was kind of, I guess, a throwaway. It just gave Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal and them something to do with the Golden Globe winner, Paul Walter Hauser. And I watched the Golden Globes, but I don't remember what he won for, because I just remember thinking, I don't recognize this dude, and I didn't recognize what he won for, because I'm a little out of the loop on my entertainment for the last year.
Yeah, me too. I didn't see what I saw him in was that Clint Eastwood movie? Was it Richard Jewell about the Atlanta Olympics? So he was the main guy in it. I thought he did a really good job. And I had known, like, from watching that movie, like, he's a big wrestling fan. And you could tell straight away he was a huge wrestling fan, because he referenced, like, I always bypass Connecticut and go to Jacksonville. When Jeff Jarrett came into the ring, he was like, "Hey, this ain't Memphis." Like, he hit all the stuff to let you know, like, "Oh, I'm a true fan."
Yeah.
And I would have to just think, being from his perspective, right? He's a kid. He's watching Monday Night Raw. Fucking Double J, Jeff Jarrett's hitting people over the heads with guitars. And then he's like, "Oh, a couple decades later, I'm going to get in a fucking ring, and Double J's going to smash a guitar over my head." Like, when he got back to the back, he had to just have the biggest smile on his face.
Yeah.
And that's the way celebrities should be used. Like, wrestling fans can always smell when celebrities are, like, not fully invested in this. And it comes off, like, terribly. Which I think is why Bad Bunny has been such a success for WWE. It's why Logan Paul, to some extent, too. I don't think Logan Paul was a wrestling fan, but I think when he started training, I think he just got it and fell in love with it. And you can tell he was working really hard at it. And I think wrestling fans appreciate that. Stephen Amell, huge wrestling fan when he was doing stuff with Stardust. So I think it's cool to use celebrities in that kind of sense. The Bow Wow shit, I'm glad that they stopped that, because you could tell he didn't give one fuck about anything.
Yeah.
They couldn't even focus the damn camera right when he had to do his little promo. So, and I guess that has gone by the wayside, because that was we ain't seen nothing about it. So,
there was a headline yesterday that said they've officially moved on from that. So, that's good to know.
But Hauser, I thought it was great. I kind of loved this segment, actually. I love Jay Lethal and Sanjay just cheesing it up with the Golden Globe. The Golden Globe in the camera. It was great. Double J, we have to apologize to him. He's been nothing but fantastic.
He's been entertaining. I mean, but it's getting a little old pretty quick on me. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to shit on him too much, but, like, come on now.
I think he's been great. I think he's been a massive get. Because even, I mean, you could say, okay, that spot needs to go to a younger guy, but like, is a younger guy gonna be as entertaining? I,
Well,
I don't know. It's got to be good TV at the end of the day.
it was entertaining last night. We can get into that in a minute when we get into Dynamite. But I did think the way they used him on Dynamite was fun. But let's touch on the street fight real quick with Ruby Soho and Willow Nightingale versus Anna Jay and Ty Mello. Kind of thought that Nightingale fucked Anna Jay up pretty bad when she missed that table.
Yeah, that was a hell of a spot.
That was brutal.
She, obviously Ruby and Willow were doing the Dudley Boys throwbacks with the camo, and that Willow powerbomb spot is a classic Bubba Ray Dudley where he was powerbombing Mae Young and all those women. He was putting them through tables and shit. The difference is that shit was happening like in the ring.
Right.
Like Mae Young, he powerbombed her off the stage, but they clearly had like a little padding there and kind of shit like that. Willow just her ass went through the table and Anna Jay just smacked
Yeah.
concrete.
Felt a little bad for her in that spot because that had to hurt.
Yeah, she was sore that mark. But I saw some people calling Willow like, oh, that's Nia Jax 2.0. If you're that ignorant of a wrestling fan that you can watch a Nia Jax match and watch a Willow Nightingale match and say, oh, these two people are the same, you have no idea what you've been watching and what you've been a fan of. I mean, Willow is night and day 150 times better than Nia Jax ever was.
Well, it starts and ends at the she's a big lady because I mean she's clearly more athletic. She's got about 1,000 times more charisma in the ring than Nia Jax ever did. Like it's completely different.
I mean, maybe this is TMI, too personal info, whatever. Willow Nightingale's the hottest woman on that roster. Let's just put it that way. I mean, put it that way. Maybe get a little too personal there, but I said last week I think she's going to be the biggest star in that company by the time December rolls around. So
I probably wouldn't argue with you on either point.
right. Yeah, I think I'm going to be proven right. But I mean, and also people were up in arms because fucking Ruby Soho bled buckets. Even like Ric Flair, as much as I love Ric Flair, he, if anybody needed to just shut the hell up about bleeding buckets, it's that damn guy, right? With all the matches he bled buckets. But he was just like, hey, I don't want to see women bleeding. And it's like, oh, well, then that's just misogynistic, right? Like
Yeah.
if your critique of this was, I don't think the blood is necessary to tell a good story. Okay, that's a valid criticism.
It was a street fight.
Yeah, I think it's a valid criticism. I don't think it's the right one. But at least it's valid, right? And it can be applied. The same critique can be given to somebody like John Moxley. But if your thing is just like, oh, I don't want to see women bleed in wrestling, all right, well, get with the times. That's all I can tell you. Like,
Yeah.
if the men can do it, the women can do it too. If it's too gratuitous for you, then that, I guess your mileage may vary on that. But there were a lot of like sneaky little misogynistic comments on Twitter,
Yeah.
that sometimes wrestling fans can be stupid, but whatever.
Well, let's get into Dynamite last night. Like I said, they led off with a graphic honoring Jay Briscoe, and then they got into Orange Cassidy versus Jay Lethal. It was announced earlier in the afternoon that Double J and that crew would not be allowed to be ringside if they interfered in the match, that Sanjay Dutt would be fired. And then Danhausen appears as an usher and asks them for their tickets when they show up ringside, which I thought was kind of funny. And then it cuts to best friends Chuck and Trent walking in the first row with a thing of popcorn and the biggest fucking beer I've ever seen in my life, which I thought was pretty hilarious. They're just making their way down there just to go sit by him and eat popcorn. Solid ass match with Cassidy and Lethal. I know Lethal's one of your dudes, man. It's you get pissed that he gets put out there and gets beat all the time, but he's putting these guys over, man.
And that's the thing. Like, I've just accepted it. But when he first came in, I was hyped because I thought maybe they would use him in some kind of other capacity. It's clear that the only utility they really saw in Jay Lethal was, this dude's a good hand. He's a veteran. Let's bring him in here and let's let him put over some younger talent. not mad at that. I mean, I've just accepted it at this point, and he does a damn good job at it, right? There's value in being a veteran like him and putting over these younger dudes, and he does it incredibly well. And you still, every time he's in that, even though every time you see Jay Lethal, he gets pinned on TV, there's still a part of you that's like, oh, he could win. Like, and
Yeah.
that's why he is what he is. I'm with you too. I thought the ancillary stuff with Danhausen and Jeff Jarrett and the best friends was I thought that was funny too. I thought that was a cool little thing. Uh,
Yeah.
I even loved that like Chuck and Trent made their way from the other side, but they had to walk completely through the front row and just bypass everybody instead of just doing the easy thing and coming down the steps.
Yeah.
Whoever put that segment together, whoever produced that, it was good stuff. Danhausen still in the guitar and hitting a little riff before he's running around. That was funny too.
Yeah. I forgot what he tweeted out. He tweeted out late last night, early this morning. It was like, yeah, the name of the song was and it was something funny like, "I'm gonna rock your body," and then in parentheses, "all night long" or some shit like that. It was funny as hell. Yeah. So next up, Top Flight versus the Young Bucks. There had been some reports that one of the Jacksons was a little injured, and I think it was Nick. Was it Nick that had his back taped up a lot last night?
Yeah.
So they put Top Flight over in a pretty great match last night.
So Top Flight now, I think for the past 2 weeks, what they were in tag team matches against the Combat Club. I think one week was Claudio and Yuta, the other week was Moxley and Claudio, or something to that effect. So this is a cool little story they're telling with Top Flight. These guys are super young, super athletic. They're getting in the ring with huge stars who are kind of, beating the shit out of them a little bit, but they're teaching them stuff. And then last night, that story pays off a little bit where Top Flight, getting a little savvy, right? They got the little roll-up win with the pin. I think Darius got it. So this was a great match. That fucking double team move that Top Flight has
Yeah.
is, I mean, holy shit. I don't know what else to say. Like, when he pulled it off, like, fuck, that's one of the greatest tag team finishers I've ever seen. And that wasn't even the finish of the match. They didn't get the pin, but I was like, damn. That little double springboard where, Darius has him in that electric chair position and Dante does the springboard, jumps off into the damn Scorpion death drop DDT from the top. It's good stuff. Just the fluidity in this match, too. Guys being in the right spot, the athleticism. Yeah, obviously, the Young Bucks had a lot of wars with the Briscoes, and so doing little callbacks to some Briscoe moves. They did the Doomsday Device. They had the wristbands on. That's a nice little touch for fans that know. So yeah, I thought this was great. I guess Top Flight now. Where do you kind of put them in the tag team division? Because obviously right now it's sort of dominated by the Acclaimed, who are also baby faces. I don't know. I don't know where Top Flight. I guess you could just keep giving them wins at some point.
Yeah, you could tell a couple of years ago when they debuted that they would be special when they got a little more experience under their belts. They debuted versus the Young Bucks. Unfortunately, they've had some injury issues that they've dealt with, but I think they're getting healthy, and they could be poised for a run sometime in the next year.
Yeah, and it probably would have already happened, right? Had Darius not gotten hurt. I think he got hurt. Didn't he come back in the same night he returned? He tore his ACL.
It was pretty quick,
He got
yeah.
in a car wreck or something like that.
Yeah, it was a car wreck, I believe, yeah.
So yeah, these two guys are, AEW is going to have to find their next generation of Young Bucks at some point. The Young Bucks are getting up there in age, and I can see Darius and Dante carrying that torch of tag team wrestling. This high impact, high velocity, damn athleticism all over the place. That's what those guys have. So
yeah,
cool to see.
Well, next up was Jake Hager versus Ricky Starks, our man Ricky, Stroke Daddy. He's putting together a nice little run, and I ain't mad at it. it was an entertaining match. He puts on the purple hat at one point, and they had a little back and forth there at the beginning of the match. So yeah, I mean, it looks like he's gonna probably end up going through a lot of the Jericho Appreciation Society, I guess, coming up.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to do a rematch again with Chris Jericho. I mean, that has to be where it's kind of going, right?
Yeah,
Um, I mean, we talk about how much we love Ricky. Jake Hager has some utility too, and being a big guy who constantly loses. I mean, I don't even know when the last time he won a match on television was. Starks is still over as hell with the crowd. And you even saw him last night. He gets the win and then escapes and runs up the ramp with all the fans. Like, that's the way Ricky should be. I mean, Ricky's one of your guys. Like, he's one of your top 5 dudes in that company. So,
yeah. They had the camera zoomed in on him perfectly at one point. He turns around, like he's running up the stairs. He turns around, and he shoots the deuces,
yeah.
up in the air, and
Yeah.
it was just a perfect shot. I thought it was awesome.
AEW doesn't book this way, but in my opinion, they should. Ricky Starks should be one of the guys when you're writing television for the week. You got 5 or 6 guys, and you say, okay, they're going to be on television. What are they doing? Like, what's Ricky doing? What's Hangman doing? What's Danielson doing? What's Moxley doing? Like, these are the dudes that you build the show around. And Ricky has moved up into that echelon, I think. He wasn't there 6 months ago, but he's damn sure there today.
Yeah. So next up, Bryan Danielson versus Bandito. If you didn't hear us last week, we had the whole conversation of this has kind of been pitched as Danielson's got to go through like the top 5 guys or whatever. And we ain't mad at it, but Takeshita last week is not a top 5 guy yet. He will be at some point this year. They put on a banger of a match, and then last night, Danielson versus Bandito. This is just Danielson getting to go out and have a bunch of fucking fun. I think that he probably went, like you said last week, he probably went to Tony and was like, "Hey, these are the guys I want to fight.
Yeah.
How can we figure this out?"
Yeah. That's all this is. This is the equivalent of like being able to watch, be over Da Vinci's shoulder as he's like painting the Sistine Chapel. Like that's the level of greatness that Danielson's at. I don't know if we as fans are appreciative of just what the hell is happening right now. This dude, the greatest in-ring wrestler of all time, is putting on classic television match. This was a classic match. This was fucking bonkers from start to finish. Also, you got something in Bandito, man. They're in fucking
Yeah.
California. Bandito ain't been on television in a minute, and he's across from one of the most beloved wrestlers of his generation, if not the most beloved, in Bryan Danielson. And what's the crowd chanting? Bandito, Bandito.
Yeah.
This. I don't want to compare Bandito to Rey Mysterio because I think that's a sort of belittling how massive Rey Mysterio is as a professional wrestler. I mean, his influence is worldwide. But Rey Mysterio is getting up there in age, and so this new generation needs some sort of masked luchador like that they can look up to. And in terms of just the mask quality, that fucking Bandito mask is badass. People
Yeah.
love motherfuckers in masks, right? That's why Batman's got a fucking mask. Every superhero's got masks because masks are fucking cool. And especially one like Bandito, which I don't even know how they mentioned it last night. Like, I don't know how that motherfucker wrestles with his nose and his mouth being covered.
Yeah. How are you breathing?
But he's doing it. He's figured something out. Maybe he's got gills or something. Fuck, I don't know. On the side of his neck. He's impressive, man. Bandito,
Yeah.
he's a shit. And I knocked over my microphones, which is why I rattled it. Like I kicked it. But yeah, man. Bandito is fucking awesome. Danielson's awesome. Like, have they even announced who Danielson's gonna wrestle next week?
I don't think so.
Oh, Brian Cage.
Oh, they did. You're right. Shit.
So Brian Cage, another dude who's just a big fucking monster flippy guy, and they're probably gonna tear the house down next week for 20 minutes. And I ain't mad at it.
Yeah, I mean, because anytime Cage has been on TV lately, he like you said, he's torn the house down. So I expect nothing less next week.
Here's the big question coming out of this segment: Is it the right move to let Danielson beat MJF at the pay-per-view? Even if you let, like, even if you let MJF get the title back, like, the next night or whatever, Danielson has been on such a run. He's not had it yet. You haven't really hot potatoed the world title at all. There's only been 5 guys who have won it in the three or 4 years that AEW's been a company. Like, is it worth it to let Danielson beat MJF in an Iron Man match like he said he was going to do? And then to further kind of establish that MJF is really the fucking devil and this monster that's behind this mask, he comes up with an even more diabolical way to fucking take the title off Danielson.
I mean, it's possible because, there's been rumors, not rumors, but like headlines and stuff the last week. They're like, oh, there's, people doubt over the fact that MJF can last in an Iron Man match. And then he even brought it up in his promo last night, right?
Well, the reason I asked is because, like, MJF last night was a different character than what we've seen 2 weeks ago. And what we were complaining about was just like, hey, this MJF that we're seeing that's making, like, generic Asian jokes, like, I think I even theorized, like, he's doing it to try to get the crowd not to cheer for him, but this is not a good way to go about getting somebody not to cheer for you. It's bad.
Right.
But last night, you saw that fire. You saw in that backstage promo what made MJF just a generational talent, like what he said.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, you have a guy in Danielson who's on the run of a lifetime. Just not having in-ring matches when your company in AEW, that's what it's built on. Your fan base gravitates towards people who can go when the bell rings, and they ain't nobody better of all time than fucking Danielson. So I'm just saying, I've just floated out there. It might be worth it to let Danielson beat MJF in an Iron Man match, and then to have MJF realize, like, if I'm really going to have this title and be the guy on top, I have to reach a level of insanity and evilness to where I have to be this dude who will be so damn ruthless to take what is mine from anybody and do whatever remains possible.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, you could be right. You could hit him with the DDP ring the next night, or not the next night, literally, but a couple nights later.
Or have I don't know. I would have MJF do something like, I don't know, super fucking crazy. The only reason I thought of this is because Jay Briscoe, his unfortunate passing, but they ran a famous angle in Ring of Honor, was the Briscoes against Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black, who became Seth Rollins. And Jimmy Jacobs and Tyler Black jumped the Briscoes, and they hung a bloody Jay Briscoe upside down over the ring to where the blood was dripping on the mat, and Jimmy Jacobs was delivering a promo underneath it.
Shit!
It hit that fucking level of, like, we're gonna do some crazy shit. So I'm not saying they'll probably do that on Warner Brothers television at any point, where they fucking hang somebody upside down as they're bleeding. But, like, if MJF is gonna be the devil, we gotta see the devil, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they've
bad shit. So
made that comparison many times throughout the last year. So yeah, I mean,
and Danielson's the perfect guy to do it on. He's the perfect babyface to do something just absolutely diabolical to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just something on the back burner. If AEW had a writer's room, that's the thing. When you come in on a fucking random Tuesday or Monday or whatever, you throw that up on the whiteboard, right? Like, hey, if we have Danielson win the title, where do we go? Like,
yeah.
Let's kick it around. Who's got ideas?
What if?
Yeah, what if? It's worth exploring, for sure.
So next up, Willow Nightingale versus Toni Storm. Toni Storm gets the win. It looks like they're turning Saraya heel already. That didn't take very long.
Hey, why didn't they fucking do this last week if you were going to do it? In front of a Los Angeles crowd.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. It's confusing, I guess. It makes me think that Mercedes might not be showing up, or maybe she is. Because here's the thing. So you have this Willow Nightingale Ruby Soho connection that has happened. Well, as Toni Storm's promo last night, where she was referring to the WWE girls, where she was like, these AEW originals, they don't know what we know, right? Belittling them. Well, if you have Toni and Willow in a match together, One would then lead to believe that you're gonna then pull Ruby Soho and turn her heel and have her join the faction with Soraya and Tony Storm. But are you doing that because you see potential in Willow Nightingale and you also want Willow Nightingale to be a part of this big women's angle that you're about to do? Or are you pulling Ruby Soho over because there is no Mercedes Moné that's about to come into AEW and you have to find a third person? That's
Yeah,
my
I don't know. That's a good question. Um, I don't know, man. Because they got, you've got the Sheeta angle with she's frustrated with her role and whatever Soraya's doing, and
yeah. So the,
yeah,
the trio for on the other side for the AEW originals is Sheeta, Britt Baker, and Jamie Hayter. Well, if Mercedes is on the other side, then that's cool because you pull Willow to the AEW original side and you just insert her into the thing. But if you ain't got no Mercedes, you gotta get a third woman. And so the only other woman that's also been in WWE that you can pull this angle with would be Ruby.
hmm, I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Yeah, there haven't been really been any more rumblings about Sasha Banks, aka Mercedes.
Yeah, it's been quiet.
That it's been quiet, so and they missed the opportunity to bring her in last week. So if they didn't do it then maybe she just ain't coming.
Maybe she ain't coming. I'm just saying, like, if you were gonna turn, this was kind of an uneventful heel turn for Saraya and Tony Storm. They just kind of did it after the bell. There was no sort of rhyme or reason to it. Like they just started putting the boots to her, and that was just kind of it.
Yeah,
Why not do that in front of an LA crowd that was already hyped as shit? You know, they were hyped to see Jamie, and then you can have the heel turn happen against fucking Jamie Hayter. But again, like I said, it could be because they have to do it against Willow because they got to separate Ruby because they need a third woman.
yeah,
So I don't know. I mean, this is gearing up. It's going to be an interesting story when they finally get into it. And like we mentioned before, like there's a lot of fans online have already booked the WWE ex WWE people are coming into AEW and ruining the product. So why not just fucking make that a story and put it on screen? It's right there for you to do.
yeah. And the women's division seems like it would be the perfect place to do that because it needs. Well, I don't want to say it needs that spark because it's definitely gotten better the last few months, but it was down for a while there. So I don't know. I don't know. You might be onto it. I do. Let's go ahead and move into the last match, the TNT Championship with Darby Allin versus Kushida. I didn't really know anything about Kushida. I thought the Marty McFly stuff was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can speak more to his career.
Yeah, he's a New Japan guy, and I think his tag team was Time Splitters with Alex Shelley, and they were the junior heavyweight tag team champions for a couple of times. Probably they feuded with the Young Bucks. There's one I think I saw Kushida and Alex Shelley in one of the Wrestle Kingdoms I watched, where they just kicked off Wrestle Kingdom and they had like fucking four junior heavyweight tag teams. It was like the Young Bucks, Time Splitters, and I can't remember. Maybe it was Roppongi Vice and some other. And they just had like a crazy fucking spot fest to open up Wrestle Kingdom. Uh, Kushida's fucking cool, man.
Yeah,
He got a cool look about him, and Darby's cool. I love that. Like this has basically become Darby Allin's month in January. He's gotten a lot of shine in main event level spots. Um, and I say it all the time. Every time Darby's on television, if I was 14 years old, dude, be my favorite wrestler. I'd fucking paint my face in a heartbeat. Like he has something you can't teach in wrestling. You can teach arm bars. You can teach suplexes and headlocks and drop downs. You can teach somebody how to run the ropes. You can't teach somebody. You can't give somebody a reason for other people to root for them. It has to come from within somewhere, and it has to be something that the fans connect to. And it can't be artificial. It has to be genuine and organic. And Darby has that. Like I think even last night they might have showed a close up of like a kid in the crowd that had their face painted. Like that shit's important, man. Like at the end of the day, this is as much as you and I love pro wrestling. It is um, an art form that a lot of people fell in love with when they were kids, and it is best probably suited for kids. Just because pro wrestling, when it's at its best, it's at its simplest, where it's just good versus evil in a very simple sort of physical confrontation. It's easy for kids to wrap their head around in a way that, like, I don't know, fucking Game of Thrones or whatever the fuck, Dostoevsky's like not for the Brothers Karamov's not for fucking 12-year-olds, right? This shit's it's for adults who have life to them. But like pro wrestling it's for kids, and it's simple enough for them to understand. So you have to have people and characters that appeal to children. I think that was a big reason why Jungle Boy and Hook teamed up. Because hey, they fucking got cool ass hairstyles. Probably the coolest hairstyle tag team that ever lived. Uh, so I mean, there's a lot of value in having people like that, and Darby has that for kids, but he's also, you and I are fans of this dude, and we fucking got families and shit too. So
Yeah.
it's I think he's a superstar, man. I really do. He's another one of those guys where like a pillar that I'd be like, okay, what do we have Darby doing this week? Like we got to give something to him. And Sting just continues to just be. I love the pairing of Darby Allin and Sting. That was such a smart move.
Yeah. Is Sting injured because he hasn't been physical a lot lately?
I don't know, but I mean, I wouldn't have Sting. I would, you know.
You want to save some of that anyway for.
Well, when the pay-per-view comes up in March 5th, much like he has, I think the last three pay-per-views, you're going to put Darby and Sting in some kind of tag team match that has no disqualification, and Sting's going to get up on the fucking seats and jump off the shit. Like, that's what he's been doing. So,
Yeah.
it's January 19th right now. Pay-per-view ain't till March 5th. He can just have a seat and fucking come March 5th, his ass will be up in the rafters jumping off something.
Yeah, you don't need him wrestling every week.
Yeah. Although it's going to be a sad day when he retires. Also, a little bit more outside the ring news, there was a big feature, I think, probably last week or the week before, written up on Sting, where it really made it seem like this is it. This is the last run. The last year of Sting is 2023, and it ain't he will not be coming back after this. So,
I mean, if you're looking at it as an outsider, like we are, or I am especially, I mean, I think you're right because like, what is he gonna do after this? He came in. He's gotten to put on some insane matches the last year or two, and I think he's found his guy. Like a guy like he can be a true mentor to Darby, and like where do you go from there? You know what I mean?
yeah,
I don't know.
and if you know anything about Sting and Scott Borden's background, he was never a wrestling fan growing up. He came into this early 20s when he was at Muscle Beach, fucking working out. I think he saw like Hulk Hogan working out there and was just like, who is this dude? And then like a random promoter approached Scott and was like, hey, have you ever thought about wrestling? And Scott Borden went to a wrestling show and he said that's when he fell in love. And him and Jim Hellwig, who became Ultimate Warrior, went down to Memphis and became the Blade Runners. They had the buzz cut blonde hair. And so, to hear him talk about it, he was only going to do this for a couple of years and then make his money and get out. And now he is 40 plus years into this career. And you can't take Sting out of wrestling history. It goes all the way back to the damn 80s, him and Flair. Flair really made Sting with that, I think it was Clash of the Champions where they did that draw. And then Sting with the face paint, much like Darby, got over with the kids and then just kept going. I've heard stories where people would talk about like Sting was so green that Ric Flair and like Arn Anderson and those guys would be in the ring with him and would have to tell him like, hey, do the like pound your chest now, like turn to the crowd, like do the howl. Like it was that like elementary. Like he was just it's like it's like a racehorse trying to get up on his
Right.
legs. But when you finally train that horse, like fucking, he's had a career. Like I mean, he's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And how many people get 40 plus years in a professional wrestling career? It's crazy that so many contemporaries of his have unfortunately passed away, because wrestling is hard on people, and a lot of people have fallen into drugs and bad habits, and a lot of people that Sting shared the ring with are just not here anymore. And so not only is it that Sting is still alive, but it's even more crazy that Sting is still competing at this age.
Yeah.
So it's wild. He never got the respect that he should have gotten from WWE. when he came in to do that run. He was always the holdover. Vince wanted to kill WCW one last time, so they did all that disgraceful shit with the WrestleMania with DX. If you're and also the propaganda that WWE engages in, there is no way, shape, and form that anybody that knows a lick about wrestling history would tell you that D-Generation X was as big of a deal as the NWO. No, the hell it was not. The NWO, when it happened, and when it was Hulk and Nash and Hall, and they were feuding with Sting, and Sting was up in the rafters, um, not saying anything for a year. That's when WCW was whooping WWE's ass in the ratings because that was the story. But of course, WCW doesn't emerge the victor of the Monday Night Wars, and so Vince McMahon, and he gets to write history, right? So he writes it where like, oh, Triple H and all, no, I mean kids were doing suck it's, but they, the fucking nobody's doing any more suck it chants or suck it gestures routinely now. There's a lot of fucking people still too sweeting out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people still wearing NWO shirts. Don't see that many DX shirts, do you? See a shit ton of NWO shirts anywhere you go. We're fucking going to GCW Saturday night. Guarantee you there's going to be about 6 motherfuckers in there with NWO shirts on because that's how cool it was.
Yeah. Speaking of GCW Saturday night, there's a lot of Huntsville connections for wrestling things happening in the not too distant future. I don't know. I assume you saw this that Danhausen and Jungle Boy were both announced for the Huntsville Pop Culture and Comic Con that happens every year at the VBC, and then Conrad Thompson's Top Guys weekend is going to be in Huntsville this year. Did you see that?
I did see all that. Yeah, that'd be cool. Huntsville, Alabama's got we got a weekend here to shine and to see if we're a big time indie wrestling town because so much of, excuse me, part of the issue is that like indie wrestling has always been big on like the coast, right? Or like the Northeast, Philly, Baltimore, Boston, New York. Like that's kind of where Ring of Honor made its name. And then out on the West Coast, you had places like PWG, where the Young Bucks and Super Dragon and Kevin Steen, El Generic, all those guys. Indie wrestling's never really been big in the South at all. But now we have GCW coming to town, which is the biggest independent promotion in America right now. You have right here in our backyard, New South Pro Wrestling, which puts on high quality stuff. And they've brought in people like Danhausen. They're bringing in guys like Davey Richards, like big time legitimate wrestling names. So this is Alabama's weekend and Huntsville's weekend in particular, coming up Saturday and Sunday to really kind of show out. And
so Saturday in Huntsville, and then Sunday in Florence, they're doing GCW versus New South over there, which could be fun. Could be a lot of fun. I don't think I'll make it over on a Sunday evening, but it could be a lot of fun if you're over in that area.
People are gonna be lit Saturday night. This shit's about to be wild. Wild.
Yeah, I don't have any idea what I'm walking into, and you've told me to just get my head right about it. So.
Oh, bro, it's gonna be Nick Gage is their champion. If you've seen anything about Nick Gage, he has a very, very, very devoted fan base.
Yeah.
And
what little I know about him is that he once died.
Twice.
And was brought back to life. And then you said he just walked into a bank without a mask on and robbed it.
Yeah, he went to prison.
Yeah. And then he used a pizza cutter on Chris Jericho, and then they went to a Domino's commercial.
Yeah.
During AEW.
It's MDK all fucking day. Nick Gage. And then they're big like Bussy, which is the tag team of Alley Catch and Effie. Effie has a very devoted fan base as well. Effie kind of leading the charge. If you don't know about who he is, he's kind of taken over that role of that like Colt Cabana had. If you are familiar with Colt Cabana, where it was like Colt wasn't on WWE or any kind of national TV, but it was just like making a good living as an indie wrestler. And I think Effie's kind of that blueprint now for this generation. Like he's on Twitch and
He's probably got a podcast, I would assume.
Yeah, he's got a podcast. Charismatic guy. There's a great match between Effie and Mance Warner that you can find on YouTube where basically they run through all the fucking greatest hits of WCW because old Manser's such a WCW mark, and they hit the fucking Dusty finish, and they hit the Sting coming down with the bat, and Sting was Marco Stunt and was laying everybody out. If you can find that match, I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. That's where I watched it. Effie versus Mance Warner was just absolutely fantastic stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Saturday, man. It's gonna be hyped.
Have you seen, is Mance going to be on the card for Saturday?
I haven't seen it. I think he's the tag team champions, but I don't think he's gonna be there. He hasn't been announced.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
No
about
light
it.
bears and lariats. No fucking eye poke God. I wish he'd fucking show back up in AEW. Like shit. It was
Yeah.
one night, I guess. That dude, again, like I said when he debuted on AEW, if you give that dude consistent television time, Mance Warner, he'll be a star. So
I think they must have thought highly of him because they gave him a whole goddamn video package. You know?
yeah. So I don't know what maybe there's Ring of Honor plans for him when that gets started up. Who knows?
Well, I think that's going to get it for the week, man. It was an exciting week and will be another exciting week moving forward. So next week we'll report back on, my first GCW experience. Is this your first show with them as well? I know you know about them, but have you ever been to a show?
No, I've never been to a GCW show. I've seen matches. I saw a lot of their matches when they were in Hammerstein.
Yeah.
But no, I have not been to a GCW show at all.
Well, it should be a lot of fun, and we'll have a lot to report back on next week, so y'all stick with us. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Alabama Slam Pod. I guess if you're going to search us on Facebook, be sure to search the Alabama Slam Podcast. Some other goobers out there, I noticed in a Facebook group this week, started a Facebook page called Alabama Slam that's just wrestling news or whatever. Like the world needs another one of those.
They're stealing shit from us. That's how influential we are.
I mean, I commented on the post when I saw it, and I was like, "Hey, did y'all search this?" And because when we did our podcast, I searched Alabama Slam Podcast. I knew it was a wrestling move from back in the day, but I was like, I just wanted to make sure nobody else was using that mantle and whatever. It doesn't matter. I could go on and on. But yeah, y'all, thanks for following us, and share us with your friends if you appreciate it, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Later, guys.